Welcome back to the Spinner Rack, to a special episode, our season one recap show. You're your host, Stephen,
And
and
Andy.
ah,
Well, we don't have a book that we're mentioning this time, so I was jumping in fast.
yeah, we didn't script everything as well as we should have. So we are 24 weeks and 48 books into the new universe. And that's about 1,000 pages of comic book fun and joy.
Right.
So the new universe, as you'll recall, was a publishing imprint and plan by Jim Shooter, along with Archie Goodwin, Mark Gruenwald, Tom DeFalco, and a couple of extra guys who, in 1986, threw out a full line of 8 comic books to celebrate Marvel's 25th anniversary by generating new comic books with new characters and a new world, our world, the real world.
The world outside your window?
That's the one.
Yay.
We've been reading some of the history of this time and how they did it, and we'll chat about that a bit. And we will go through our first 6 months of each of these 8 comic book series that were produced and what we've gotten out of them and how they've sort of changed as they've gone along. Hopefully this will be a good starting point if you haven't been listening to us, and possibly if it piques your curiosity, if this is a good point for people to jump on and maybe go back to something that they enjoy particularly. Let's see. A lot of the history of the new universe kind of has a question mark of why Jim Shooter thought to do it in the first place. So why have a new universe when you have all these established characters and their top sellers and everything? He says he wanted to sort of really push the envelope and not just retread old ground. I've seen something that he really thought Stan Lee wanted to create more science fiction in the first place, but that Jack Kirby's love of fantasy perhaps overpowered that direction. I don't know. I have a personal theory that Shooters may have been thinking about a conversation he had had a couple of years before. You can find on his blog that he was recommending that Marvel buy out DC and then take over publishing Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, just the core titles as just a licensing arm. And that's the first mention I've seen of having a isolated universe within the Marvel universe.
Which could have been the DC universe, which would have been really interesting. Yeah.
If they had done that, yeah, it would have been, we'll just keep them to themselves and we'll just develop this line of comics on their own. And people weren't doing that at the time. So that's why it kind of jumped out to me as like, is this the first time he was thinking of doing that? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Because he was thinking of it kind of almost like, let's take the greatest hits, right? Like, not everything DC publishes and just roll with it. Let's take the big names, start over their own little universe, So yeah, it would have been really interesting. But I think the story went that it probably would have happened if not for Marvel being in some legal trouble about being a monopoly from something, right? So then, like,
Yeah, they
the
had like
idea of taking on
75% of the newsstand audience already. And so if they'd have gone for the DC's much smaller, but still significant audience, they would have been like a 90+%.
right. So perhaps that was why it didn't actually happen, but it gave them
You
the
learn a lot
idea.
about these sort of business shenanigans that affected a lot of, why did this comic book happen or not happen? There was a business deal that you didn't ever heard about. Anyway. So we are 6 months in, and the new universe, as we're well aware, was not a resounding success. So unfortunately, there were already signs that the titles were having to change creators, having to change directions. And for us, we're doing this right now because we think there's a significant change between right around this point. It's hard to pinpoint it exactly, but knowing that in the greater behind the scenes world, that Jim Shooter is leaving Starbrand with the next issue, we think. And he's pulling back from being a creative and editorial force in the new universe. At this point, these books have been out for a few months, and it's long enough that they've gotten sales reports and then tracked them for a couple months. And so you're starting to get things published by them that's aware of that. And well, they're going to sort of change things up more to try to broaden the appeal, I guess. So they haven't canceled anything yet, but Starbrand is going to go bi-monthly, and then we'll start seeing some other changes that I honestly expected to see by at this point already. They'll start having more fan involvement with more contests. There'll be a slogan contest. They'll start having universe news published more frequently.
About
ever. Putting fan mail columns in. I didn't realize that was taking so long. I was it that hard to typeset like a page of text? I would have thought that was a lot easier than doing a
Right. I think that, I mean, the impression I get, which I didn't know at first, was though, right? So like the new universe story kind of goes of, all right, so you've got Jim Shooter's got the idea, wants to see it through. Of course, initially they have this big budget, so like, okay, we're ready to go. We're gonna make this big, splashy, like cool new thing. And then Marvel, because they were going up for sale, they pulled the entire budget, like basically no money for new universe. But he was so invested in it already. It sounds like that, all right, he's going to do it no matter what. They already kind of had these meetings and such. But then it sounds like the beginning of the new universe, almost in the office, kind of had to happen on the sly. Like, like there weren't big meetings with all the Marvel people. They were just kind of getting it done behind the scenes. All the books were kind of late. But he was still big into publishing them on time, so things would get kind of like rushed in and out, and so I imagine a lot of that is going to have to do with the creator changes, and then like not having the too many of those fun extras of letters pages and all that. But so maybe that stuff's gone by the wayside a bit. Everything's maybe settled down a little bit. So now, yeah, okay, let's actually start smoothing this out, or at least attempt to.
Yeah, I think that they say a lot about reliving the days of the Marvel universe and being there at the ground floor and sort of starting. And a big part of that was building the fan involvement and stands, rah rah editorials all the time, and we love your letters. I'm sure it was, they were pushing for that all the time. There was a number of things now that they'll do that are, I guess, free.
Yeah.
There was a few things they could have done if they had some money that I think would have really helped them, that any comic book company would tell you to do now, like have, top creators. If you can't afford to get them on the books, at least get a cover by them, if you had a month of Frank Miller covers, that
Right.
would have helped sales, So, some of this is from in hindsight because they were doing this the first time. This is all very first time. If you read Shooter's explanations for how his original thought was, or alternative was to reboot the Marvel universe, do basically Crisis, and start over with kind of an ultimate Marvel. I mean, that happened like 10 years later. It didn't reboot, but they had a huge success having like a self-contained, slimmed down continuity, um, fresh take, modern origin stories, all that. So
Right. Nobody wanted to do that in 1985 or whatever for the 25th anniversary. So then we got the new universe instead.
yeah. So let's see. So as we part of this, it comes from looking at Marvel Age 50, which Marvel, the new universe was announced in about 44, and by 50 they announced, guess which one of these characters will die. So it's like 6 months turnaround to okay, we're gonna have to um, juice things up a bit here. So um,
Which
actually, more than one probably. They've been pushing the PSI Force or sorry,
Spitfire.
troubleshooters,
Yeah.
Spitfire. Yeah.
That our
Anyway,
whole last issue of Spitfire and the Troubleshooters at the end is like, somebody's dying, somebody's dying. You want to hear about it? You should read this one because someone's dying. A troubleshooter is dying.
it's
Okay,
the
not subtle.
it's what was the saying? More red flags than Moscow on May Day or something. But
That's a good one.
once you start reliving the '80s, it's like that Cold War just never ended. I don't know. So let's see. So how about the first 6 issues? Should we pick favorite moments or start going through the titles?
Hmm. I think we should go through the titles and it'll refresh our minds for that favorite moment.
Fantastic. And you take it away.
All right, yeah. So the podcast has covered the first 6 issues of Starbrand, all of those written by Jim Shooter, and most of them drawn by John Romita Jr., who we're always happy to see. Um, and in the story so far, of course, Ken Connell is our star of this romance book. He's a, you know, super bachelor with lots of girlfriends, but basically starts off, he's a mechanic, he rides a motorcycle, runs into a mysterious old man slash space alien in a situation kind of similar to Green Lantern, I think we pointed out at the time. But he receives the Starbrand. So it's a tattoo which gives him powers. He's invulnerable, he can fly, and release energy like an explosion. But the old man is very mysterious. So most of the first 6 issues is him sort of struggling to try and figure out like what to do with this power. The old man kind of flees the scenes, disappears or dies. It's confusing in the start. He defends himself from an alien invader that wants the Starbrand. But then a lot of the following issues are trying to figure out what to do, right? So, all right, little Timmy's trapped in the well. How am I going to get to him? Like, how am I going to do this without blowing my identity? How am I even going to find this spot in the middle of the woods, right? So there's a lot of neat details about what life might be like if you've gained superpowers. It has a really
So
great.
it does sort of bring up like how limited some powers are, like without X-ray vision or several extra powers to go with them. You don't know where to go or what to do, and so
Yeah, right. Like he could tunnel through the ground, but you can't see, right?
everything's just mud. Yeah. So
You,
okay, thanks for half a Superman power there. That's
right. Yeah, he can take a nuclear bomb, and he did, right? So rescued a group of captured, like a captured cruise ship from terrorists.
right.
But yeah, there's a great cast of supporting characters in the book. His friends slash girlfriends are a lot of fun. Um, oh, okay. Help me here. The name of his weirdo psychiatrist buddy is escaping me.
Myron.
Myron, thank you. Yes. Uh, who he confides in originally and kind of talks through like kind of what to do. He's got Debbie Duck Fix, Debbie Fix, who's his, very devoted, you know, side girlfriend, really.
She seems like she's been around forever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I'm not quite sure how that worked out.
They never explain how they met or any of the backstory kind of thing, but um, they have relations together often, even when he happens to be seeing Barb, his maybe more serious girlfriend, um, who he also sort of had seemed to have made clear to that he doesn't want a serious relationship. She has kids, she's a single mom kind of thing.
Yeah, so he's got the main conflict is between the young, more carefree girlfriend and the girlfriend with a lot of baggage. But he's sort of his how whether he wants to sort of be mature and sort of step up to the plate with that is part of his internal conflict.
Right. So alongside with struggling what to do, right? He's with his superpowers, he's struggling what to do, with his relationships. Yeah. Does he want to keep being the fun single guy who's broke? um, or does he want to kind of settle down with Barb? And both women are sort of equally devoted to him, really, honestly, in the beginning. Um, as far as the story goes, he has some run-ins with terrorists who are maybe trying to figure out who he is. And also, we find as we go through the books that the initial encounter with the old man where he got the Starbrand is maybe faulty memories for him. So it may not, in fact, be just as simple as, he's been passed down this power and then the old man dies and then, okay, you're free to go. The
Only
alien,
you are worthy, Ken Connell.
right?
Yeah, no,
Which is pretty random.
it's so much weirder than that. It's almost like, yeah, Total Recall. He'll start like his friends will start criticizing his origin story, and he'll be like, "Wait, that doesn't make sense, does it?" And he'll go out and look for at the scene of where he had a fight, and there's nothing there, and so it becomes like a kind of a scab that he keeps picking at, and we're still not quite sure where he's going with it, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah. So uh it's still a little unsure. What is the Star Brand? How does it work? Where did it come from initially? Where did the old man get it? Why did he actually give it to Ken Connell? Is there some secret there? Um, in the last issue that we covered, all of that sort of comes to a head. So he decides he wants to be with Barb, but that falls apart pretty quick as the old man kind of crashes the scene. He has to rescue Duck. Uh, the old man kind of confronts him in a way. They end up fighting. He kind of, scares him off to a degree, but kind of left with a lot of questions. And then our cliffhanger was kind of huge, right? So he kills his relationship with Barb because, Duck kept showing up and needing help. Ken hadn't explained the Star Brand to Barb yet. He always wants to, but never does. So he can't really explain himself.
he very
Um,
casually like told a couple of friends about the Star Brand, but then like it's a big conflict of whether he should how to tell the other friends. It's yeah, it's I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, if she's going to be his ex girlfriend, do you want your ex girlfriend to know your
That's
secrets?
that's the ultimate question I learned from Starbrand is do not tell girlfriends about your Starbrand power. Because if they're your ex-girlfriend, that's yikes. Yeah.
That is the
Anyway.
problem. So yeah, so in the end, he kind of ends his fight with the old man, kind of maybe blasts him away or to safety, and then is lost in space. So it's a big cliffhanger at the end of, we don't know if Duck's okay. We don't know if Barb has given up on him forever. We don't know if he's going to be able to get back to the planet. And we don't know if the old man is going to come back and cause more problems.
Indeed. Yeah, that by the end of six, um, that's a great cliffhanger. Uh, the Starbrand, I would, is reputed to be, and I think we'll agree, is the flagship title for the new universe. Um, in a lot
Yeah.
of ways, it's yeah, it's realistic. It's relatable, even uh, if it's not like heroic, like he's not out there looking to save the world all the time. He does try to do what he can when he can, but um, it's one of these, realistically, how often do opportunities to help people really even come across your plate? Um, but it's all told from Ken's own point of view, and he's a little more like working class, kind of didn't use his potential kind of a character. So it's a lot of stories you feel you could yet tell with Ken Connell and that Starbrand power.
Yeah, I think
Um,
like the central, for me at least, like the central idea of the new universe is kind of like, well, all right, what do superpowers really look? What would superpowers really be like in the real world, right? Without all this fantasy stuff.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was, I mean, they
that's the
wanted to be
story of
realistic,
Starbrand.
but they
So,
wanted superpowers.
right.
Right, right.
So that's what makes it kind of fun.
So yeah, mission accomplished.
All right, one sec.
So another part of the book is that you're always wondering how autobiographical it is because Shooter grew up in Pittsburgh as a tall guy who I'm not sure he went straight to college, but he was a real sharp kid apparently. Um, so we're always kind of wondering just how much of this is based on Shooter's life or like his friends that he, worries about or um, you know. So without him as sort of the driving force to Starbrand, it's hard not to think that it'll lose that sort of very unique perspective. But up next, they've promised to have Roy Thomas come on as the writer. So for our previews at this point in the game, he's on board to at least take the next issue.
Yeah, my understanding is Jim Shooter wrote the plot, and Roy Thomas will be doing the script for this one for issue 7.
Right, right. So I don't know. People will, always ask like about books that were canceled too soon and like the creators what were you going to do, where were you going to go with this? I got to say I would really love to get a few minutes with Shooter and see if he had some more plans up his sleeve for where he was going to take uh, this title.
Yeah, I'm totally working on that, but it's not easy. So Jim Shooter, come to a con in New York or something. Let's get this done. Or have more of an internet presence so you're easier to track down. Yeah, it's definitely will be different without Jim Shooter. I think one of the things I've found about comics that I really like are when you have sort of like a singular vision of like creator who gets a long run and kind of gets to do what they want on a comic book. And
Hmm.
one of the big knocks on the new universe is always the creative changes. Though I will say, up to this point, they've weathered that fairly well. I mean, it might be a little different if I was reading them at the time, but for a new universe reader in 2022 or whatever, it's not that bad. It's not a big mess. I mean, it was perhaps behind the scenes, but reading things with an eye towards history and just finding something fun to read, like most of the time they've pulled it off pretty okay. It doesn't make me not want to read any of it. And
Yeah,
Starbrand as the book has been very consistent so far. So
yeah. The let's see, Shooter is also sort of credited in some of the interviews I've seen as sort of a guiding hand, sort of behind the scenes, like the guy who told everyone what realistic meant to him. So obviously that's a kind of a broad um, uh, generalization to be like, is this realistic or is that realistic? But so we'll see where they go and how they get there. But yeah, it's a testimony to the Marvel bullpen of the day. They could produce things monthly. I mean, nothing skipped a beat. And out of 6 months, we have one fill-in issue, at least only one obvious one.
Right.
So that's 1 out of 48. That's pretty good. And I'd say one real stinker in terms of the grade.
I was going to say stinker too, which is downright.
We've got a
good.
clean rating for this podcast, so you folks all understand.
Yeah. If I picked up 8 Marvel books off the shelf, like on New Comic Book Day, like chances are some of them are going to be bad.
Sure.
So, the beginning of the new universe, I think, is easy to recommend for anybody. And they don't cross over that much yet, so you don't have to read them all, but you can.
That's right. Let me see. It was the Starbrand crossed over in Starbrand with Spitfire in the second issue.
Yeah, so Ken kind of runs into Spitfire and the Troubleshooters in the second issue, and then he shows up in their comic later.
Right. I keep forgetting which book the crossover appeared in. But
yeah, the big crossover was in Spitfire and the Troubleshooters.
So overall rating for the series so far.
It's definitely one of my favorites. I had read it before, and I knew I liked it. I don't know. I think it's an A. I don't want to start too high, but it's definitely one of my favorites. Just within the new universe and in comics in general, I like it a lot.
A++.
Oh, you went up to me.
No,
I didn't think we were doing pluses.
we're not. I'll also give it an A. Overall, I can't take any of the reservations I might have, like that would bring it down off of that. It's outstanding art and writing, and even though it's confusing, it's a fun kind of confusing. So I will go with it and enjoy it. So,
and Ken flirts with everyone. It's great.
If you've got friends and you'll start doing Ken impressions to them all, it cracks them up every time.
Yes, everyone will instantly understand what you're doing.
Oh, that body. Yeah. Speaking of which, we'll move on to Spitfire and the Troubleshooters. So in this book, it was Jenny Swenson, who's a engineering professor at MIT. She's very young and attractive. Still,
redhead with nice body, as Ken would say.
at the least, the book started with her father being killed by his boss, a guy named Fritz Krotzky.
Yeah.
He was working on Man Amplified Experiment, which is basically a big sort of manga style robot suit that was intended for peaceful purposes only. She steals it from this industrialist with help from some student hackers she knows called the Troubleshooters, who are all kids at MIT. So she's like hiding out because legally this guy Krotzi owns the armor, even though she blames him for her father's death, and she thinks he's going to use it for like military purposes. I think it's well established that he's a military and like contractor. So yeah.
I I don't know what Jenny's father thought he was going to do.
He was pretty focused on the work, I guess. I don't know.
Why does the
Um,
CIA want to use my technology for spying on people?
nothing, sir, nothing. Is that a laser beam you have attached to the robot's arm? Oh, okay.
Just for giving PowerPoint presentations.
Oh, okay, that's good. Okay, sure. So let's see. So they the one of the first like public heroism moments we see in the comics are is when, as we said, in Starbrand, he's thinking about rescuing a kid who's fallen down a well, and Jenny shows up in the Max armor and just goes straight down there. It flies, of course, and pulls him out, rescues him, and the crowd goes wild. And it was really sort of a more optimistic moment. We were hoping, it'd be sort of a more public, perhaps superhero type situation, but it didn't work out that way. First, this Kratzy sent a tank to try to destroy or capture the Max armor. The guy, Kratzy himself, kills the guy he had sent to kill Jenny's father. Jenny and the troubleshooters break in to the research facility to get evidence about the club. Later, there's a sort of a nemesis introduced, a assassin working for this group called the club, called Steelhawk. He's really sort of over the top in the realistic quotient of the new universe.
Yeah,
But
very like Rambo 2 sort of character.
yeah, like an evil Rambo you have, which I mean, it's a fun kind of a crazy, but so that guy kills the original villain, Kratzy, and damages the Max armor. And after that, Jenny is accused of killing Kratzy. She's been sort of set up by the Steelhawk character, and she spends at least one issue in prison. And we get another crossover with Starbrand, who comes back just to sort of put the kibosh on the Max armor, which had been damaged before but was now totally destroyed. Finally, the last few issues we've seen the troubleshooters do more themselves by taking parts of the Max technology, like the arms and the legs, and the laser,
Yep.
and they make their own sort of mini Maxes. So each of them has like just enhanced arms or just enhanced legs. So it's an interesting way to go with this that I wouldn't have expected at first. And at the moment, we're waiting for some disaster to fall because both the story and the editorial have been making a lot of hints that one of the troubleshooters is bitten off more than they can chew with this fighting the Steelhawk character, so that one of them will die soon. The cliffhanger we had at the end of 6 was that the Steelhawk had planted a bomb to try to kill the British Prime Minister who was visiting, and the troubleshooters were racing to try to stop that from going off.
Yeah, if I remember right, she was gonna like throw the switch to light the Christmas tree, and he had trapped the that trigger.
Yeah, it was rigged to go off. So he's like, 3 seconds, you'll all be dead. Ho, ho, ho. Yeah, he's a little over the top. Yeah, I don't know.
Very much so.
So Spitfire, from what we've read behind the scenes, was the one that was sort of most changed from their original creative team and original vision. There's like a couple of guys who were like more behind the scenes editors or letterers there that had sort of given the winning pitch for this comic to be part of the new universe, but they were only on the book for like an issue or two. So unfortunately, a lot of that was like the interest in MIT campus and things were part of their pitch. So we lost a lot of interesting potential there, we thought. But
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that sounds like that had to have been the genesis of the troubleshooters sort of idea, right? 'Cause they had thought about, what's it like being on campus and, sneaking around and causing trouble and all that kind of stuff. And jumping from roof to roof, maybe even. But yeah, maybe that's in part why our troubleshooters in the beginning, didn't really get characterized that well.
yeah, at first we thought they were really undercharacterized. We didn't get half of their names or personalities for 2 or 3 issues easily, I'd say. But
Then they supplanted Jenny in the book. So we
yeah,
went
I
from,
started calling it the troubleshooters and Spitfire. I don't know. I mean, she goes to prison. They're trying to break her out, and then she gets out and just tells them not to make trouble anymore. And they're like, "Yeah, let's go make some trouble." Yeah, okay.
let's go save the prime minister.
Yay!
Try not to get blown up in the process. All right, so Spitfire and the Troubleshooters is an interesting book. Yeah, the story is bounced around a little bit, and we just mentioned some issues with the main character disappearing for a time and such. But it also has some really great moments. Like there's a lot of really fun pieces. My favorite moment in Spitfire and the Troubleshooters was when Eddie, the troubleshooter, got the strong arms and like boosted his confidence to 11, and it didn't end well. So that was the battle with the behemoth tank kind of thing. And there's some fun moments where the other troubleshooters kind of use their powers. The think tank, is that it, right?
Yeah,
Teresa's like weird mind hacking thing,
very cyberpunk early days there with like a heads up display, but it also suddenly her like self image is floating in the net, and you're like, you're just accessing text files. What are you talking?
Yeah, yeah. I think it basically amounted to like she had this amazing brain helmet, but she had to like alligator clip into like a physical location in order to connect it.
Yeah, they're like, there'll be thousands of bits coming through here per minute. I don't know if you can handle it. And they're like, yeah, let's get that modem ready.
Yeah, and then like she goes into this sort of dreamy mindscape computer world searching thing. But yeah, basically she's acting like a search engine, right? So like words on a police computer show up as images to her, and it's a little funky, but yeah, a lot of those things I think are a lot of fun. And I really like when Kratzy killed the assassin with like the Star Wars space laser. It's like, hey, stand a little to the left.
It's literally immobile. It takes a whole room up. So he has to tell the guy, like, yeah, move to the left a little there.
Yeah, it totally reminded me of like Mr. Burns and like the trapdoor in his room kind of thing. So.
So this one is hardest to guess where it's going because it's one that'll still have creative changes, and I think they've signaled pretty well where they're going next issue or two with killing a troubleshooter, and then there's name changes in the title. So and hopefully they don't kill them all. I don't know, but so overall rating for the series so far.
I went first last time. Long pause.
I'm tempted to say B minus. It's enjoyable. It's kind of in the middle, but trying Trying to think if what is like the good parts that good.
Yeah,
Uh, I'll bring it up to a B. I'll say B.
yeah, I was thinking B as well. I mean, we'll see if we agree on every single comic book. Um, it's not it's not really like so bad it's good, right? It's a little different than that, but there's definitely issues with the characters and sort of the plots and such, which hold it back a little bit. You know, there's probably way cooler things they could have done with the story. Um, but looking back on it, you know, it's just kind of fun. Like there's a lot of neat parts, so it never feels like a drag to read. So
That's true.
B made sense to me. I was thinking B minus maybe, but it seemed a little unfair. But hopefully it I mean it could get better. Hopefully it doesn't kind of fall apart or lose direction even more. But yeah, I have no clue what's going to go on next. So
I think yeah, our grades tend to be sort of just within the new universe, and everything's just sort of relative to we're not going from like Watchmen to disaster and like try to fit these on some absolute scale,
I think almost
Kelvin scale.
I think almost everyone who writes about the new universe online is like out to tear it apart and make fun of it. Honestly, like if you've ever read anything about it, it's usually about like this is this is a disaster. Oh, maybe one story is okay, but hey, look at this train wreck kind of thing. It really isn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not looking to rip it apart. We're looking to find joy, and doesn't make it a super biased grade, but why read something to hate it?
Yeah, we're not writing reading it just to make ourselves miserable. We're having a
Yeah.
good time with this overall.
And that being said, if something's bad, it's bad, but and we'll call it out.
Yes,
But could any book with Lita Mercado be bad though?
I think not.
So that's my smooth transition into Nightmask.
See, senor.
So yeah, Nightmask 1 through 6. This is the most white eventy book so far of the list. So the new universe was supposed to sort of start with this bang, this white event, and a lot of our books did start with a death. Basically, Dream terrorist plants a bomb in the airport and blows up poor Keith Ramsden's parents. Keith goes into a coma. His sister is crippled. And while he's in the coma with his sister by his bedside, the white event happens. So, of course, he's dreaming in his dream coma, gains dream powers. She's sitting by his side, thinking about him and to protect him. She gains supportive dream powers, right? And thus Nightmask is born. So he has the power to enter other people's dreams, perhaps hilariously by sleeping next to them.
You make it sound a little, Ken Connell-ish there. I don't know.
My
First,
dream
he has to
powers.
seduce them. Then he has to get them to go to sleep.
See now, Susie, my dream powers are even stronger if I'm the big spoon. Oh,
Like Nightmask roofing these patients. I don't know.
he can fall asleep really fast. He's okay. Yeah, so he finds out that he has these powers because it turns out he's in the hospital next to the man who bombed the airport, right? So basically the hired goon, and so which then he runs into the gnome, which is basically his parents' evil dream research competitor, who can also enter dreams through technology. But yeah, so that's his first battle. So basically the stories go as he enters someone's dream and tries to solve some sort of problem. So they set up a business with Dr. Ballard, who had been monitoring him, his physical therapist, Lita Mercado, the stealthy star of the show. And yeah,
Well, it's Teddy's physical therapist also.
that's true, right? He's not just there to make Keith buff. But yeah, so
And horny.
they solve the yes. You can't stop that. He is 18. Yeah, they sort of solve the mystery of the bombing. Gnome kind of continues to harass them. There's a dream vampire character, Madam Midnight. He helps old friends with a drug problem, random patients who kind of need help, somebody in the witness protection program. A lot of individual stories about helping someone with a problem by getting into their dream. Um, a good dose of the gnome in the background causing problems, and a healthy dose of, he's kind of a horny 18-year-old, so it makes it fun.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I originally told Andy about this movie Dreamscape. That was from a year or two before this book came out, and I still think this is one of the titles that's most like a source material, in that the ability to enter dreams and then try to help or hurt people is very much like that. And also Nightmare on Elm Street had been out for a couple of years. So
Yeah,
it
Archie
was,
Goodwin definitely watched Dreamscape.
yeah. So it's tied into the new universe with the white event giving them this power. Um, but so far, that he's like the only paranormal he's met. Um, and it's sort of very episodic and taking care of other people's problems. So he sort of solves mysteries where the mystery is what's going on in your dream and how that's hurting you or reflecting something that's going on in the life around you. Um, so I don't know. Is it more mystery or horror? Something like that?
Yeah, initially I thought it would be kind of like the horror comic, and I think the first couple issues bore that out more than the last, right? So it's not consistently kind of horror-y or scary stuff.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's kind of like horror fantasy. It's an interesting mix. You
Yeah,
can kind of do whatever you want with dreams. So,
yeah, no, very open-ended. Um, but
and I
it's
think if anything, it's lost a little bit. I think the gnome and Midnight, Madam Midnight, Mistress Midnight kind of storyline is kind of interesting and compelling. Um, the individual stories, like the kind of in betweens where he, solves some random person's problem, are kind of interesting on their own, but like I wish it was a little more fluid. Like, I don't need it to wrap up the gnome storyline quick, but he kind of jumps in and out, so it makes me lose track a little bit.
yeah. I'm afraid the prognosis for the future isn't good for the gnome storyline coming back anytime soon. So I'm a little pessimistic about getting resolution on that. So, and that is yeah, a good driving point to the story. Having a villain, someone you're struggling against who's trying to sabotage you, helps flesh out the narrative in a lot of books. So having
Yeah,
a strong villain makes a strong hero, I guess, would be something in a normal comic book you'd say.
that makes sense. Yeah, and even I mean, it's just hard with uh, writer changes, but um, yeah, I was reading Walt Simonson's Thor run, and like in the beginning, for quite a few issues, there's this character in the background who's like forging some kind of super sword. And like, each issue you maybe get a page or a page and a half, or even just like a couple panels of like boom, 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 like something menacing is happening in the background. Like it would have been cool to have that. uh you know the gnome is healing, or Madam
Mm.
Midnight is approaching, or just something
Yeah,
to kind
yeah,
of remind us of the story, even if we're dealing with Robin Hood and his merry men that particular issue.
right. Yep.
Still fun though.
Mm, okay. Overall rating.
All right, so it's my turn to go first, probably, right?
We play our cards pretty close to the vest here.
I don't want you one up in me. I'd give this one a B as well. It's not perfect, but it's definitely enjoyable, and it's a lot like Spitfire for me, where there's a lot of really cool parts of it. Like there's a lot even amongst the different creator or different writers and such. It seems like almost every issue has a couple of really kind of fun bits to it, and I like the characters as well. It's not perfect, but I definitely enjoy reading it.
Yeah, I guess I'll take a B. It's sort of straight down the middle for me with how much I enjoy it. It's not really, there's nothing. Well, okay, Leader Mercado stands out a bit, but the uh, it's just sort of it shows up. I enjoy it. I don't necessarily stay up waiting for the next issue, but I'm happy enough to see it when it gets there. So
Yeah, I wish I had some clue what the heck was going to go on in the next issue. Like by the end of reading four, I have no idea what we're going to see in five, kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, it yeah feels like it'll jump around a bit. I'm not sure if it settles down before the end.
Yeah, obviously the books came out years and years and years ago. I could cheat, but I'm not going to.
Well, well, cheating would be a thing that Force won't let you do because they have psychic powers.
Hmm. That
That's a
that
terrible
transitions
segue.
maybe a C minus.
Sorry. I could start doing my Gangnam style thing, Psy again, but Force is started off with five teens who had manifested psychic powers, ostensibly also caused by the White Event. They were manipulated by a CIA agent, Emmett Proudhawk, to leave their homes and meet up in San Francisco. And when they got there, Proudhawk had just rescued the fifth teen, who was a girl from Russia. And then he was killed by some KGB agents, at least one of whom also had psychic powers. And
Mind Wolf, right?
Mind Wolf, that's right. The teens, once they got together and there was like a medallion or something, found that they could join their psychic powers together to form something called Psi Hawk, which seemed to be like a gestalt of all of them. Voltron, what did you say?
I amended it to say it's really more of a Captain Planet than a Voltron.
Okay. But it has like its own personality and driving force, which is maybe Proudhawk or something. I don't know. So the teens are in San Francisco and they end up living at a teen runaway center called Sanctuary, which is a run by a friend of Proudhawk's. And it's a very large place with a lot of strange kids. Cyhawk started bossing them around and telling them what to do, weirdly enough, and not letting them go. So even though these kids didn't really want to leave their homes, some of them had pretty happy home lives, and would want to return there. This like psychic being will start forcing them to turn around and go back to Sanctuary. They're all kind of mad at him at this point. Overall, they've gotten in fights and been threatened with murder by various some of these other teenagers at that shelter. They're like half the kids there are some like biker gang from a 70s movie or something.
Not your typical orphans.
It's like guy looks like he's 30 and is always pulling a knife on everyone. They're like, uh, now don't show your powers here because it'll run off people like cool. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm not cool here. Um, and the Psyhawk himself is kind of a villain sometimes, but they've tried to help the others around them when they can, but they're mostly just running scared and really kind of unhappy being on their own.
Yeah, it's an interesting book for sure, and a lot of cool characters. I'd say like Wayne is definitely my favorite, just because he's such an angry teenager, and I think I've talked about him a lot in the podcast. But at risk of being repetitive, in the first time we meet him, he's just a huge jerk to everybody, and I'm like thinking in my head, like, all right, well, they're going to, you know, get to know each other, all become friends and start working together well and like training their powers. And like, no, he's still a jerk. He hates them all and wants to leave, but he can't.
He absolutely does not like them very much.
So like he
Um,
tolerates them now because he feels like he has to, but
he
then like
hasn't softened his edges at all. It's the so when we started it, we said it was very Breakfast Club in terms of the personalities of the five teenagers, and yeah, that's the outsider Judd Nelson
yes.
character is he's still, yeah, every issue ready for scratching for a fight there.
Yeah, I mean if the Breakfast Club had to deal with, roving gangs of teenagers to 20-year-olds and the KGB and questionable CIA agents, and so yeah, better than the Breakfast Club, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. They do. There was a rogue teenage psychic. I forgot to include in my list.
Oh,
Um,
right.
so
Thomas the
yeah,
Stalker.
yeah, they are meeting other people with powers and having to fight them. So that's also interesting. Um, but so far they're not really, it's not like a nice school for mutants or anything. They're miserable and they're constantly looking over their shoulder. And it was a good cliffhanger actually at the end of six, where they got tossed out of Sanctuary finally. After months of being like, if you kids show your powers around here, I'm going to kick you out, and then doing nothing. They finally got booted out, and they were headed off on Christmas Eve in the back of a truck.
Yeah. I like that from a storytelling future perspective, but it also makes me a little sad because we were developing the running joke that the sanctuary had a limitless number of rooms. They show it from the outside as this sort of, reasonably large, but like a row house building. But, they got a cafeteria, a wood shop, they have everything. Room for like 30 kids, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we were constantly like, is this cafeteria at the high school, or this is in Sanctuary? And it was in Sanctuary. It was like, that's
I think maybe even the street fights in the alleys and where it might have been inside Sanctuary in some sort of pocket dimension.
yeah, it was I'll miss Sanctuary if we don't get back to there. I gotta admit it. But I would say it's the most comic booky because you have a lot of teen angst and powers like uh, being used and explored, and so it's like a you know New Mutants slash I don't know what
Teen Titans,
Teen Titans maybe.
maybe.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that sounds right.
they
They were
definitely
they were fighting a lot in the early days. I remember. Yeah.
yeah, they definitely have like definitely more traditional powers than like DP7, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And they're not like physically changed. So it's one of these things where you'd think they could just sort of fade into the background, but they're always, something about their power pops up and everyone freaks out and all that.
Yeah, and well, two governments have their names on a list too, so that's
That
also part of the tension.
so let's see. Overall rating for the series so far. Um, at the risk of being generous, I will give it a B plus.
Ah, you stole my grade again.
Damn.
I was thinking B plus. I think it's got that consistency that Nightmask and Spitfire doesn't quite have, and
Right.
yeah, I like the cast of characters and such.
Yeah, yeah. It's uh it's fast paced. And I like they've had two or three issues of going back to meet people's characters' families. And I found them, also well developed. That's always like a good sign if you have sort of uh, even minor characters and you're like, yeah, this isn't like a cartoon character. This is, recognizable. So
Yeah, and I flat out love the idea that their combined superpower, this like awesome Psyhawk that has all of their powers but boosted, right? Like it's even better at it can do everything they can do, but stronger.
mhm.
I love the idea that they hate it and are terrified of what it's doing to them, right? Like they're not teamed up to fight crime. They're totally weirded out by the fact that this even happens. And he's almost like the villain. It's not really because it's trying to keep them safe, but he's not making their lives better, and they don't enjoy it. And so again, I was thinking that it was going to be, maybe a couple issues, and then they're like, "All right, Cyhawk combine, let's solve the problem," kind of thing. But
Yeah.
no, they chucked the amulet. Like, can they even summon Cyhawk anymore? I don't know.
I don't, yeah. I've been wondering if that'll pop back up. But good question.
We got to go find that amulet. Where was the park that we tossed that thing? Maybe they don't even
Did
need
we?
it. It was just a placebo.
Yeah, yeah, the power was within them all along.
Did
Yeah.
you press the cliche generator button?
Oh, I got a million of them. A million of them, I tell you. Oh, let's see.
E pluses all around. Anything else
Uh,
to say, or on to some football players?
art's been pretty consistent. I think that'll change, but yeah, one of the more consistent books, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't stand out. Like in my head, there's not like memorably awesome art issues, but yeah, it's been consistent and good.
I mean,
No,
that really counts for something, and in some ways, yeah, you're like you at least know what you're looking forward to it a little or something. Anyway.
yeah, you're not wondering if you're gonna get something that looks like it got sneezed out in 5 minutes.
Onward and upward.
That would have been a better transition to Mark Hazard than kickers.
Kickers has also been sneezed at on occasion, I think, but
That's true. Yeah, I don't think it's suffered for it in the same way. Okay, so we're going to take a break, and for the rest of the issues, check out part 2 on a separate podcast.